Well, I think we know that Zelensky doesn't write the script that he's reading from himself. These are not honest statements made by a man holding genuine beliefs. Zelensky is a tool of Western intelligence. We know this. The New York Times is now starting to tell the truth. We know that the Ukraine drama is a CIA MI6 generated drama for the purpose of creating friction with Russia.
Mm.
Friction designed, by the way, to achieve a Moscow Maidan. I've been saying this for years. People need to really start listening. The goals, the mission of the United States, Trump, Anchorage dreams. It's BS. It doesn't exist. It's fraudulent. And I know why the Russian government continues to do this, because it's better to talk than to have the Biden freeze out. But at least Biden was honest. Biden said, I want Putin gone. Biden sent his defense minister to Kiev, who came back and said, our mission, our objective, the strategic objective of the United States is the strategic defeat of Russia. That means the total collapse of the Russian economy, total collapse of Russian society, and the termination of Vladimir Putin's government. This is the goal of the United States. Zelensky is a tool. Go from the very beginning. Do you remember, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition? That quote? Well, it turns out that he didn't say that. The CIA put those words out there, and they admit it when confronted. Zelensky has zero original thoughts. Zero original thoughts. He reads from a script. Sometimes he goes a little too far, like an actor who thinks that he's suddenly become the writer, and he will go out there and do it. But then the director will come in and slap him around and say, no, you don't get to write the stuff. We write the stuff. You simply get to read the script. Zelensky is reading from a script, which now makes this even more nefarious. Because why would he be provoking a fight with Belarus at this point in time? Why? Because this is a long-standing Western narrative, especially a European narrative, especially when Donald Trump is talking about Lukashenko in a positive. Remember, on the way to Anchorage, the fraudulent exercise, who did Donald Trump call to get insights into Vladimir Putin? Lukashenko. Called him up. And now they're talking, the Belarusians I've spoken to the Belarusian mission down in New York, in Washington, D.C. They're so thrilled that America's talking to them, talking about airlines and everything. So what does Europe not want? They don't want an indirect route to Vladimir Putin through Lukashenko. So Europe is telling Zelensky to provoke a confrontation, to continue the long-standing Polish and Baltic dream of bringing Belarus out of the Russian orbit, to break up the Union state. This is what Zelensky is about right now. Now, his brouhaha with Poland, that's just him being Zelensky. He has to deal with domestic political realities. He's been given a green light by the United States a long time ago to normalize the Azov regiment, to normalize the Nazis, to normalize the Banderists. You remember the United States used to pass a National Defense Authorization Act that said no U.S. taxpayer money to Azov because they are Nazis. I mean, we used to say that, and suddenly we stopped saying that, and then we invited the Nazis into the Capitol, where we sold their memorabilia. Their Nazi memorabilia was sold in the United States Capitol to raise funds for these people. So Zelensky could be forgiven, I guess, to think, hey, I have basically carte blanche to normalize the Nazis, so especially when the only successful fighting forces on the front lines right now are the Nazi Banderists. I mean, I just came from the Donbass. They hate them, the Russians do, but they say they're good fighters. They fight hard. They're tenacious. So when these people say, hey, we need to motivate our soldiers more, we need you to rehabilitate Andrei Melnik, bring his corpse back, bury it with honors, and allow us to rename our units after him, Zelensky went, good idea, not understanding that it would provoke Poland. But at the end of the day, Poland isn't going to back away from Ukraine. Poland will continue to play the European Union game. So this is not a risk for Zelensky. The Belarus thing is a European gambit. How far they will push it, I don't know, man. Look, they're crazy. The Europeans.
You know what this tells me? This action by Poland. But first of all, Poland is really important. Do you have that graphic that we put together today? I created a graphic today that I wanted to show people. As you well know, 90% of all the military aid that comes to Ukraine goes through Poland.
Yep.
Goes through that little airport that we have right there. You see it in the middle of the map, and you could probably open it up. You can see it. There it is. Yeah, thanks. So it flies into that part of southeast Poland. Then it goes into that corridor and through trains and other types of transportation. That's how 90% of the weapons that are used to kill Russians comes into Ukraine. The Russians know this, by the way. So Poland is a very big part of this war theater for the Ukrainians. It's pretty stupid for them to be pissing off the Ukrainians. And by the way, just before I leave this, and I let you, because I know you're probably going to have a lot to say about this, isn't it interesting that Zelensky is threatening to bomb Belarus over microwave repeaters, the kind of thing you have in your backyard to be able to watch, TV. That's what he's mad about. Meanwhile, 90% of these weapons that are coming in to kill Russians is coming to Poland, and Russia is not threatening Poland. So look at the dichotomy of those two scenarios that I just drew up for you. Right, Scott?
Let's dig a little bit deeper because I know right now, and you know this, that in Russia there's a huge growing cadre of experts or pseudo experts. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who unfortunately get a lot of airtime who aren't experts, but they're all saying it's time to strike Europe. It's time to attack Europe. It's time to take Europe out. And Vladimir Putin is weak. Well, that's exactly the messaging that Europe's trying to promote, is that Vladimir Putin is weak. But let's dig into this a little bit more. The Ukrainians are freaking out over repeaters that don't do anything to the war effort because Ukrainians are getting their behinds kicked. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, let's look. You were in Moscow. I was in Moscow when they blew up the oil refinery on the 18th of June or the 17th. In the dramatic picture of the lid flipping through the air, and then you have, of course, the Ukrainian defense minister in Ramstein showing his phone, and you have all those Western Europeans leaning in, looking at it gleefully, saying, "We're kicking Russia's ass. We're doing such a great job." You blew up one damn oil tanker. Tank. What do you do? Bad day, black smoke and all that. I don't know. I was walking around the streets of Moscow just 2 days ago. The city's alive. Well, there's no panic in the streets. The restaurants are full. Life goes on. It's great. Would Russians prefer that drones didn't leak through and do that? Of course they would. But the idea that this represents the defeat of Russia is absurd. It's just ridiculous. It's stupid. But, this is the propaganda game being played. Russia's not panicking over the what's happening with the drone strikes, and they're not panicking over the aid being brought in. People say, why aren't you blowing up that airfield? Because Russia's winning the war, you morons. Russia's winning the war on the battlefield. The final battles of the liberation of Donetsk are taking place right now. We're looking at I think it's Slavyansk is being threatened, and Kramatorsk is going to be fall. There's another city that the Russians have 60% control of. The Ukrainians can't hold land. They can't hold the cities. They are losing. They are being defeated. They're fighting hard. There's no doubt about that. Their drones are awful. Just ask the troops at the front line. I just came from there. Their damn drones are everywhere, the Ukrainians. They're everywhere. The Russians are not panicking. They're saying, yep, problem, we're working on a solution. They're not panicked. But who's panicked? Zelensky, because he knows that the real war, where it counts, boots on the ground battles, is being won by Russia and won by Russia decisively. So he's playing these propaganda games. Right now, he's trying to provoke a conflict with Belarus in order to find a reason for Europe to get involved in this war. Europe will not get involved in the Donbass. They will not. And Europe's not going to get involved in Odessa.
So you're saying that, and I think about this all the time, and I think you're right. Lavrov and Maria and Mr. Putin and Mr. Medinsky and all of these people who you and I know are they're wise, they're sage, they're experienced. They don't knee-jerk react. And they know that someone's trying to goat them. And if they allow themselves to be goated, even though they're winning the war, in other words, they're at the 5-yard line or the 10-yard line or whatever the hell it would be, and all of a sudden they try a Hail Mary, and that Hail Mary doesn't work, and the other team takes the ball back 99 yards for a touchdown, suddenly it's like, uh-oh, we're in a bad place. That I know it's a stupid kind of football comparison that I'm making, but that's kind of where it is, isn't it?
Russia has the lead. They have the ball. They're deep in Ukrainian territory, and they're going for the game sealing drive. They've already won the game if they just kneel down, but they're going in to make sure that there is no winning this game.
Kill the clock.
Why would you do something stupid? You got Larry Zonka, I'm giving away my age, in the backfield. Jim
Kick.
And just
Mercury Morris.
Go up the middle, hand it off, go up the middle. You're going to get 3.2 yards every single time, and you're going to win this game. Nope. Don't give it to Bob Greasy to pull back. Paul Warfield's wonderful. Yeah. You throw the ball, it gets picked off. None of that. You don't need to do that. 72 Dolphins, undefeated season, baby. But
well, look, actually, it's a great football analogy because only you and I can talk about this, and most people would laugh. But the Dolphins won more games and won more Super Bowls under a boring attack or offense, and this could apply to many sports, by the way, than they did with my friend Dan Marino. Who had who's a good guy, and he and I played a lot of golf and did a lot of things together. But he was kind of a hot dog. He loved to throw the ball. He threw the ball 80 times a game, and they didn't win a Super Bowl. With Bob Greasy, he threw the ball 11 times a game, and they won Super Bowls. What does that tell you?
And it told you that they had the fundamentals down. They had a great running game, and and all that. This is
that's what Russia's doing in the Donbass right now.
100. Russia has the best coach possible. They have the best coach. Vladimir Putin is the Don Shula of the early 1970s. He's not going to do anything stupid. Again, let's just think this through, because I've had this conversation with my wife. I've had it with my friends in Moscow here in the United States. Mm-hmm. Look, we're all human. I'm guilty of the same thing. Hell, I gave a presentation at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum called "Shoot the Dog," calling Europe a rabid dog and saying that Russia needs to shoot the dog. So I'm not wise. I am a Marine. I want to close with and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver. And where's the sound of gunfire? I want to run to the gunfire and suppress it.
Yes.
This is why I was a Marine and not a national leader. Vladimir Putin is smart enough to ask the question, and then what? Because that's the most important question there. For whatever anybody wants to do, all the Z bloggers out there, all the tough political scientists out there, all the former Marines who want to kick ass out there, the question that must be answered is, and then what? Okay, so you do this. You take out that airfield, and then what? And then what will be a situation far more complicated, far more dangerous for Russia than the situation that exists today. Right now, Russia is not in danger. Don't believe any of the crap that's being put. I just came. Again, I was in Zaporizhia. I was chased by drones. I mean, it's bad. There's no doubt about it. It's bad. The people there aren't panicked. The people there are living their lives. The people there say, this is what we must do before victory comes, and victory must be sure. In Crimea, things are tough, but the Ukrainians take, the Russians. We're going to shut down.
But let's you and I be reasonable. We're Americans, okay? Let me do a comparison for you. There are more people killed in mass shootings in the United States than die in any of these drone attacks, with a few exceptions in Russia on any given week.
Yeah,
by far.
And there's more. I would also put it this way, too. There's more municipal city fire damage done daily than Ukrainian drone damage to Russia. So in the United States, throughout the United States, we have fires breaking out in industrial facilities and all that. More damage is done through normal day-to-day fires in major than what the Ukrainian drones are doing to Russia. So are people saying, oh my God, the American economy is about to collapse because there were 15 industrial fires throughout the United States this day? No, it isn't, because that's just the Ukrainian drone attacks are pure propaganda. Pure propaganda. Look at Voronezh. They hit this facility in Voronezh. It's a sensitive facility, produces sensitive electronics, but they hit the administrative building. So they burned out the offices of the paper pushers. They didn't stop any damn production. Look at Vodkins. They hit machine building 19 in Vodkins. It produces critical parts. But if you think that machine building 19 is the only building that does this work, unique to it, and it can't, you don't know Vodkinsk. You don't know anything about Russian defense industry. Vodkinsk is still producing missiles. There might have been a slight hiccup, but that's it. The Ukrainians are carrying out a masterfully executed British-run propaganda exercise where they flood the zone with drones. Look, we can build air defense. The Russians have very good air defense. People go, where's the Russian air defense? Well, they shot down 490 plus large drones. Okay, yeah. 490. That means that they expended a lot of missiles, a lot of ammunition. But what happens if you flood the zone? What happens if you have the U.S. intelligence coming in, British intelligence saying, if you shoot this seam right here, what you're doing is you're getting overlapping fields, and they only have 400 interceptor missiles available. So flood the zone with 500 drones. They're going to shoot down 400, 100 they can get through, and then the mobile teams are going to shoot down some, but you're going to get a handful of them going through their targets.
And you'll get headlines. And the media will be there like your lapdog covering it. And I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about, and you know this, and it really frustrates me as a journalist that stuff like this happen. Just a few days, speaking of Belarus, not long ago, we were all over this story where a bus carrying a boys' soccer team, Scott, it could be my kids or your kids, a soccer team going from Belarus to Russia to play in a tournament, gets bombed, 28 kids on there, 64 people in total. One lady gets killed. 7 people are sent to the hospital. You bomb a freaking school bus with children on board? And there's no sight or glimpse of this article anywhere in the Western press, of this story, pardon me, in the Western press. But then 2 days later, the story that you just explained to our audience, some drones get through and they make a lot of smoke and a lot of headlines. And yes, the price of gas went up for 3 days here in Russia. And my golf buddies, who you would have met if you would have gone to play golf with me, were all pissed off about it. So yeah, it had a little bit of an effect. But think of the difference in that, though. You know, they don't cover a story where a bus is killed with kids on it, but they blow up every headline. New York Times, CNN, BBC, showing the smoke coming off, billowing off of Moscow. That's just unfair and dishonest. And that's all they're getting out of that story. They want a headline. It has nothing to do with winning a war. It's about getting a headline.
The problem with asking the questions, though, is then you get answers that are very uncomfortable. Let me give your American audience some answers here, people. Eric Schmidt, one of the founders of Google, has funded a company that produces a drone called the Hornet for the Ukrainians. Now, the Hornet uses AI, and the Hornet uses Starlink. That's Elon Musk's company, an American company that to provide the satellite connectivity to guide this thing in. Now, they use these drones everywhere. I will bet you a dime to a dollar that a Hornet hit that bus. I will also guarantee you that Hornet came after me. I can promise you that because I saw it get shot down. And they're out there terrorizing Zaporizhia right now. The whole, Melitopol to Crimea road is being attacked, called the Highway of Death. There are some things, but it's bad. But here's the thing about the Hornet. The Hornet is programmed through AI to go out and loiter, and its sensors scan for specific vehicle types, and AI says or not. So on the surface of it, you're going, okay. But then what happens is when battery life, because drones, they don't have gasoline fuel, battery life falls down, the AI clicks into automatic mode and it hits anything that moves. And so the vast majority of the targets being hit are civilian targets because the vast majority of the targets, the vehicles on the road are civilian vehicles. So it's not hitting what it wants to hit. So then it clicks over to automatic mode and attacks civilian vehicles because why the hell not? The goal is to terrorize the civilian population. This is murder. This is murder. If this crime was committed in the United States, Eric Schmidt would go to jail for life and he'd be liable to the death penalty. He's a murdering sack of cow dung. And Elon Musk is the same thing. I'm just going to say it to his face. Elon, you're a murderer of children. The 21 kids who died in Starbelsk died because your Starlink enabled the Ukrainians to fire 16 drones and murder those 21 innocent children. And they're murdering the boy in the bus. They're murdering others every day. This is a crime being committed by American companies using American taxpayer dollars, and facilitated by our government policies. We are the criminals here. Without us, half these crimes wouldn't take place.
Here's my concern, given what you just explained to us, and you explained it very well. And I was in Starbelsk, as you know, and that traveling to there, I can say I was lucky enough as a journalist that the Russian military escorted me there, and they had two, I don't know what the hell they're called, Scott, but they were two vans, SUVs, and they had this equipment on top, and they detected any kind of drone, and they were literally, it was kind of scary almost. They were driving almost 10 feet ahead of our bus. So if they would have hit the brakes, our bus would have crashed into them, but they have to be and remain really close. You get one to the next to you and one in front of you. Yep. You might be able to explain to our audience what that was, but go ahead.
They're jamming the signal. You're lucky to have that, and a lot of their military convoys do have that, but the vast majority of the vehicles don't do that. There is I think I could say this. There is an app that's used throughout that people can, that gives you a warning because they're detecting drones, and then they can send a signal out to cars, to civilians, who will then get the alert. There's a drone in your area, because the drone attack that we had, the civilian vehicles were driving right off the road. The people were running out of their vehicles and taking shelter. The military, scanning around looking for the targets. The military, I'm sure, had in the front of the vehicle, they had the same jammer system, but the civilians don't have that. So civilians are getting their alerts, separately. But
here's my question that I wanted to ask you. Let's suppose, and boy, I hope this happens for the sake of both sides, because I don't think the Ukrainian people are getting anything out of this war. What's left in Donetsk? 10, 15%? Let's suppose that the Russians get that 10 or 15% in the next month or two or whenever. Whatever's left in Zaporizhia, what is it? 10, 15% also, or something like that, maybe 20%. They finished that else as well. So now they got Luhansk, and they got Zaporizhia, and they got Donetsk, and they basically got the 4 oblasts, and they finally, obviously they already have Crimea. How does that change what we're seeing now? Because in essence, that would mean that the Ukrainian military on the ground would have been defeated, but this mamby-pamby crap with these drones could still continue for how long? And is that what the theater would look like for the next year, two, whatever? Scott?
They're first of all, the mass number of drones aren't going to be fired by stay-behind forces or things like that. I'll give you an example. When I went to Starbelsk, there was 2 drones hit within a block and a half of where we were. First, the Russians said, don't worry about it, that's outgoing. And I'm like, I don't know, been around a little bit. Didn't sound like outgoing to me, but I'll believe you. And then they came and said, no, we got to get the hell out of Dodge. The Ukrainians have this derogatory term they use for the Russians that stay, that refuse to be evacuated. They stay in the villages. They call them the zhdun, the waiters. They're mainly older people, but they're waiting for the Russians to liberate them. But the Ukrainians have their own zhdun, people who stayed behind, got Russian citizenship, because the Russians bent over backwards to give citizenship to people who've gone. And then they wait. And the Ukrainians give them drones. And the thinking was that the zhdun, because my trip to the Donbass was kept secret. We didn't broadcast it at all to anybody. And yet there was a feeling that they knew I was there, because people saw that I was there, and they phoned in. And these drones weren't coming in from abroad. These are drones that are being launched locally. And this is a problem. In Lugansk right now, a lot of gas stations, a lot of things are being struck. That can only be done with insider knowledge, because the Russians are doing
so it would diminish expansively.
The scope and scale will drop tremendously. First of all, the Ukrainians right now, when they recruit, they're having a hard time recruiting infantry for obvious reasons because they're all dying. Plus, it takes a long time to train good infantry. 6-month basic training before you can send them in front. Now they're getting 2 weeks of whatever, knock on the head, 2 weeks, and then you're sent to the front to die. Basically, just to buy time. Your job is to buy time while they try to come up with something. But they are recruiting extensively drone operators, 80,000 of them in the last year. And these are the guys that are out there launching these drones, and they have a whole bunch of drones to launch. But the Russians have become very good at doing what we call pattern of life activity, meaning, there are certain things that you have to do to launch a drone. It just doesn't happen by magic. There are preparations that have to be done. So you're looking for patterns of life, and the Russians have their own drones overhead. And when they find a pattern of life, when the Ukrainians make a mistake, they kill them. And the deadliest job for the Ukrainians right now is a drone operator. They're being slaughtered. And they will continue to flood the zone with these guys while they can hold this last urban belt of Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and the one city's about to fall, whose name I can't remember. But when this breaks, and the Russians push through and take all of Donetsk, the Ukrainian army is going to break as well. And these drone operators will stop operating drones because they'll all be dead. Rubicon, which is the Rubicon Center, part of the Russian Ministry of Defense. These Rubicon units are the best drone hunters in the world. And if Rubicon gets in your sector and you're operating a drone, you're going to die. It's about 100% certainty that you're going to die. And this is what's happening. So as Russia wins this war, you're going to see a huge diminishment in tactical drones. And once that happens, now the Russian mechanized units now have more freedom to operate, and they'll do deeper penetrations, and the war will change. Drones,
they'll always be terrorist attacks. I imagine we can't stop that anyway.
Are going to be there. There will be there, but again, these things. Look, a lot of people need to reread Russian history and see what the Russians did from 1948 to 1954, 55. The defeat of the Banderists in Melnik. The organization Ukrainian Nationalism, huge fights being fought in
Nazis.
Huge fights, the Nazis. And the Russians defeated them, hunted them down in the villages, and eradicated them totally. They were all gone. Hundreds of thousands were killed, hundreds of thousands fled, hundreds of thousands were sent to the Gulag. But then Nikita Khrushchev decided to, blame Stalin for everything, and he called the Banderas political prisoners. So instead of rotting in the Gulag, he freed them in 1956, 57, and they came back and reinsinuated themselves into Ukrainian society. The Russians know what needs to be done, and the Russians will do this. They've done it, for instance, in Zaporizhia, there was a huge Zdun problem. And the Russian FSB went in there, and there isn't a huge Zdun problem right now. You can put 2 and 2 together, but the point is, if you're somebody out there supporting the Ukrainians, you will be found out and you will be brought to justice, and that justice will probably be life terminating.
Let's thank God that Putin doesn't drink the way Khrushchev did. And we'll leave that alone, or we'll get in trouble by Russian historians. Final question. You are very connected, as much as anybody I know, with a lot of the people who know really what's going on the front line. Stas is really good with this kind of stuff too. What is the outlook right now? What is the latest intel? Tell us about what is actually happening on the front lines. The West is telling us that Ukraine is winning the war. Is there anything even remotely true about that statement, or is it completely the opposite?
Ukraine's not winning the war, but they're putting up a hell of a fight. There's not a single Russian that I spoke to there who's engaged in the fighting who had anything other than words of not admiration, but they recognize a tough enemy when they see it. And the Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight. The drone operators, I spent a lot of time with Russian drone operators, and they say the Ukrainians are very, very good. In many cases, they're better than the Russians. They have better technology. The West is flooding billions of dollars of technology. Technology means a lot in the drone game. The Russians are playing catch up continuously. Now the Russians will catch up, very innovative guys, and they eventually find a solution, but then Ukrainians flood it again. This makes for a very, very hard fight. And sadly, it's a very bloody fight. This drone, to advance through the gray zone where FPV drones are, you if you do it wrong, you die. Literally, you die. You're going to die. And so a lot of Russians are dying. People need to understand that this is not a bloodless fight. This is a very hard fight. But Russia's winning this fight decisively across the front, and the Ukrainians can't sustain this fight. This war is going to end in Russia's favor. And the other thing is that Russia, even though this is a hard fight and they're taking casualties and all this, this isn't the kind of casualties where you say, oh my God, I have to mobilize 500,000 men to bring them in. Russia has this under control. The casualties they're taking are not sufficient enough to disrupt the plan that Putin has in place. This is why there's no panic in the Kremlin. People say, oh, he's weak. He's this. No, he's the smartest dude out there right now. He has a grasp of everything. At the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, his plenary speech was all about the economy, because he's not going to let this war define his strategic objectives for Russia, which is to build a Russia that exists successfully after the war is done. But then he turned to the soldiers. He gave them their orders, Robote and Brat, keep fighting, brothers, keep working. He knows what needs to be done, and it's being done. The Russians do have a problem with information warfare. They're their own worst propagandists. They have things that they could do better to tell this story. They're not good at it. The Ukrainians are being advised by two of the intelligence services that have the best information operation programs out there, the United States and the British. And so this is why we get what we get in mainstream media, in the blogosphere and social media, this narration of Ukrainian victory, Russian defeat. But the truth is, and I'm here to just tell you, I spent 10 days in the Donbass. I know it's not a lifetime, but it's more than just zipping in and out. And the truth is, I've never seen a region with better morale. I was expecting something because I'm telling you, Melitopol, no electricity, no water, and gasoline was very hard to find. Let's just be honest about that. I was supposed to go to Kherson, couldn't. The road was too dangerous. But instead of people saying we surrender, we quit, we want to, they're like, no, we got this. Don't worry about it. We got this. Kids are going to school. After Starobelsk, you'd think the kids would be afraid to go to school. The universities are full of students who are going to school. You'd think after the bus got hit and the kid died, that people say, I'm not getting on a bus. They are living their lives, and they will not be intimidated by this, what's going on. They know, because the Donbass was an area of huge struggle during the Great Patriotic War, World War II. They know what true resistance is. They know what true struggle is. And they know that as difficult as things are now, it doesn't even remotely approach what their grandparents went through. So these are hard people. These are coal miners. These are, the farmers. These are hard people. And, I've got their shirt on, built under fire. These are good people. They're strong people. I just hope that all of Russia, because, I don't give a damn about the West anymore because it's irrelevant. I mean, I'm trying my best to change minds here, but Vladimir Putin doesn't wake up every morning going, I wonder what the American people are thinking today. I really have to do my policy to appease their sensibilities. No, he cares about what the Russian people think. I did an interview with Ksenia Sobchak. I'm sure you know who she is. I'm not going to say she hates Russia, because clearly she lives in Russia. Her father was, a close friend, but she has a mindset that basically is the new regions aren't really Russia. Therefore, Russia shouldn't die for the new regions. And I'm like, hey, Ksenia, those are Russians. They believe they're Russians. They know they're Russians. History says they're Russians. And if you're willing to give up on the people of the Donbass, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, where else are you going to give up then when the going gets tough? Are you going to give up on Kursk, Belgorod, Ryazan? Are you going to give up on Voronezh? Hell, why not?
And when I was in Starobelsk, I asked them, and they told me we're Russians. No,
Russian.
They screamed 100% at me. They
Russian.
screamed it at me. They were like mad at me for even asking. Yeah.
Yes, and therefore the Russian people need to step up right now, and I know they are. I know they are, but there are people out there right now that are in the cafes drinking their lattes and eating their nice little meals, going, "Oh, life's hard. We had to pay 3 more cents or 3 more rubles a liter for gasoline because that made it difficult to cut out on the 18th hole." Hey, tough duty, pal.
You're making fun of my golf. Am I okay playing? I mean, really nice golf courses here. It's okay if I go on a weekend and play golf, right? You give me permission, don't you?
It's called life. It's called life. Exactly. And of course you live your life. You know why you live your life? Because That's what they're fighting for. They're
Yeah.
not fighting for you to suffer. They're fighting for you to live life. And they're making these sacrifices so that all Russians can live life. And because Russia's on the right side of history, America needs to wake up and understand that what these Russians are doing in the Donbass and Zaporizhia and Kherson, they're defending you from this odious ideology, this Nazi ideology that your grandfathers died trying to defeat. It's being resurrected.
And that's my final point as we end this, because I wanted to say this because it came to me earlier. It really pisses me off that the Polish government is castigating Zelensky and they're screaming at him because he's associating with Nazis who killed 100,000, massacred, slaughtered 100,000 ethnic Poles. I've seen the pictures. It's horrific. But they don't hate him enough. So in other words, here's my parting words. I learned today from the reaction of the Poles, who say they were going to continue to support Ukraine, that their hatred for Russians supersedes their hatred for Nazis. And that's what they proved today.
100%. 100%. And people need to go study what happened in Volyn. Every time the Ukrainians put up a beautiful Ukrainian female choir and you hear them sing their little Ukrainian female choir songs, you guys do know that when the Banderas went through the villages, they went building to building, and they had choirs of females who would sing to drown out the cries of the family of being slaughtered inside, so the other villagers wouldn't panic and run. This is documented fact, people. It is.
God.
And so
evil.
These are the people. Now, they took the body of Andrei Melnik and they reburied him and buried him as a hero, and then named their units after a man who murdered tens of thousands of Jews and participated in the murder of 100,000 plus Poles.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it is, well, Scotty, you're the best, man. You're such a good friend. When are you coming back here? I want to hang out with you. And,
I hope to be back in September. I'm finishing up 2 documentaries, one on drone warfare, one on Chechnya. I'm going to submit them to a film festival that's in Moscow in September. And, I don't expect to win anything, but I'd like it to be shown. And if that's the case, I'll come back and participate in that film festival.
That's great. That's great. Well, if you need any help with any of that stuff, I'll do it gratis, because I'll be happy to help in any way I can. You're the best. You're a good friend. You're a knowledgeable guy, and your heart's in the right place. Scott Ritter, thank you, my friend. See you next time.